Hello, 8th grade. Today we're going to go over interpreting graphs. Last week we learned how to graph a linear equation, and today we're going to learn how to look at a graph and form an equation from a graph visually. Okay, so let's get started. So, first thing we're going to learn about is the slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form is one of the ways a linear equation can be written, and the equation includes a slope and a y-intercept. That's why it's called the slope-intercept form, because it has a slope and it also has an intercept. So it is written as y equals mx plus b. This is the formula for the equation in slope-intercept form. So the slope is represented by m, and the y-intercept is represented by b. So in y equals mx plus b, m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And x is where we input the numbers. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about how ordered pair is x and y, right? So the way you want to think about a linear equation is like a machine. You put a number in for x, we apply the rules of the machine, and a y number is produced, right? And remember, we talked about how we produce ordered pairs in the previous video. We talked about how when we look at an ordered pair, I want you to read it as when x equals something, y equals something. Now, that is produced when we input a number for x, we apply the rules to it, and then another number y is produced, and that gives us the ordered pair, the coordinate point x, y. So let's look at a graph, okay? So we have the equation y equals 2x plus 8, right? So immediately you should be able to identify that the slope is 2 and the y-intercept is 8. So let's look at what that means, okay? So we have the graph here, which shows y equals 2x plus 8. And remember, the formula is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope and b is the y-intercept, okay? So what is m and what is b? Let's go over that. So m equals 2 and b equals 8, right? And let's break that down. So you will see that where the line crosses the y-intercept is at 8, or the y-axis. So this is the y-axis, where this equation crosses the y-axis is at 8, as you see, right? So that tells us what b is. B is wherever the line crosses the y-axis, that is the y-intercept. It is called the y-intercept is because where the line intercepts the y-axis, okay? So in this line, all you have to do to find b is look at the graph and see where the line crosses the y-axis, right? And in this case, it's right here at 8. So now we already know b, right? Because here we know y equals 2x plus 8, 8 is b, so we know that the line is going to cross at 8. Next, for the slope, I want you to think about rise over run, right? So all you have to do to find the slope is choose 2 points on the equation. So for example, I can choose this point and this point. Now the reason I chose these 2 points is because they are integers, right? So if we look at this coordinate, it is negative 4, 0. And if we look at this coordinate, it is 0, 8, right? These are good points to choose because they are integers. If we, for example, this one, right, we do not really know what the exact coordinate is because it looks kind of like maybe 2.5, but it might be 2.6. We don't really know, right? So whenever you're choosing 2 points, I want you to choose coordinates that have integers, right? So here, negative 4, 0, and 0, 8. Right, so what we want to do is we just want to calculate how many units we go up or down and how many units we go left or right, right? So if we look at this, we rise 8 and we run 4. So if we look at this, from the 2 coordinate points we chose are negative 4, 0 and 0, 8. So what's the difference between negative 4, 0 and 0, 8, right? So we know that the difference from here to here, there's a change of 8. It's positive 8 because we're going up, right? And then we want to look at the run. What is the difference from negative 4 to 0? Well, the difference from negative 4 to 0 is 4 units, right? Because we're going from negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0. So we know that the run is 4. So all we have to do is say rise over run. What is the rise? 8. What is the run? 4. So what is rise over run? It would be 8 over 4, which simplifies to 2, right? And look at this, y equals 2x plus 8. The slope is 2, right? Because we calculated the slope, and we know that the b is 8, right? So by looking at this graph, you should be able to tell the equation. Okay, let's do another problem. So another way we can calculate slope is by using this equation, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now this is the same over rise over run, it's just another way of looking at it. So this is the same as the change in y over the change in x. So let's look at this equation. So we have the point -4, 0, and 0, 8, right? So when we look at this two ordered pairs, I want you to think of this as x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. So all we have to do is plug this into this formula, right? So we have y2, which is 8, minus y1, which is 0, right? Over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is -4. So it would be 8 minus 0, which is 8, and 0 minus -4, which is 4, which gives us a slope of 2. So this is the exact same way to calculate the slope. It's just using an equation, right? And this equals rise over run because y2 minus y1, all that's calculating is the difference in y, which is the rise. And x2 minus x1 is calculating the difference in x, which is the run. Okay, so you can either just look at the graph and choose 2 points and look at the rise over run, or you can use this formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so let's practice. So we have this equation, right? This linear equation. What I want you to do is I want you to figure out what is the linear equation shown in this graph, right? So remember, we want to use slope-intercept form. So the only two things we need to find are the slope and the y-intercept. So remember, what is the y-intercept? Where does the line cross the y-intercept? That's all we need to know to figure out b. So let's look at this graph, right? So where does the line cross the y-axis? Well, it's at -1, right? We can clearly see that the line crosses the y-axis at -1. So we have found b, right? b equals -1, right? Now, remember, it's slope-intercept form. We've already found the intercept, so we just need to find the slope, right? What is the way we can find the slope? Well, remember, we just have to choose 2 points, right? So I recommend actually using the y-intercept as a point because it's pretty easy. So this coordinate is, we can choose this point here, right? 0, -1. This is a good one because remember, they're both integers. 0 and -1 are both integers. And we need to find another point where we have integers. The other point I see is here, 3, 1, right? They are both integer. 3 is an integer and 1 is an integer. So what we need to do is find the rise over run, right? So we know the rise from -1 to 1, the difference is 2. And it's +2 because we're going up, right? And then we need to find the run. What is the run? Well, we're starting at 0 and we're going to 3. So the run is going to be 3. So when we do rise over run, the slope is going to be 2, 3, right? Now, something else we could have done, right? We could have used the other formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? So let's look at this coordinate. We have 0, -1, right? And we have the second coordinate, which is 3, 1, right? So what we can do is use the formula y2 minus y1. Well, what's y2? It's 1 minus y1, which is -1, right? Over x2 minus x1. What's x2? 3. What's y1? 0. So we would get -0. So what's 1 minus -1 would give us 2. And what's 3 minus 0? It would give us 3. So as you can see, using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, it gives us the same slope, 2 over 3, right? So now we have the correct equation. Y equals 2 over 3x minus 1. Remember, 2 over 3 is a slope, or m, and -1 is b, the y-intercept, where the line crosses the y-axis. Now I want you to look at this graph, okay? If the linear equation is going up like this, right? As you go to the right, the slope increases, or the numbers increase. Like let's look at this. So here, oh, at this point we have -3, -3, right? If we go right, as we go to the right, the number, the y-axis, or the y numbers increase. That always means the slope is positive. So if the line goes up like this, the slope is always going to be positive. But if the line goes down like this, then the slope is always going to be negative. So I want you to remember that, so when you're doing the problems, you can always double check your answer. Alright, so let's look at the first problem. All we have to do is find the equation of the line. And remember, to find the equation of the line in slope-intercept form, you only need to find two things, the slope and the y-intercept, right? So I'm going to give you some time to think about it and come up with the answer, okay? Okay, so now that we looked at the problem, all we have to do is we need to find the slope, right? So remember, to find the slope, all you have to do is choose 2 points, and they have to be integers so that they're easy to calculate, right? So we choose 2 points. We choose -2, -1, and 0, 1, right? It doesn't have to be these points, but we just chose any random point, right? So the 2 points we chose here are -2, -1, and 0, 1 right here, right? So we have these 2 points, so all we have to do is calculate the rise over run, right? So the rise over run is 2 over 2, because we see the difference from here to here is we're going from -1 to 1, so we're going 1, 2, right? What's the run? Well, we're going from here to here, so what's the run? It's 1, 2, so it's 2 over 2. But what I want to show you is it doesn't have to be these 2 points, right? I said it could be any 2 points along this line. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a different point. We're going to choose 2 different points on the line and get the same slope. So we're going to choose a new coordinate, -1, 0, right here, right? And we're going to keep this point 0, 1. And we're going to find the slope by looking at these 2 points. So yet again, all we're going to do is rise over run. Well, what's the rise here? It is 1. What's the run here? It is 1. So what is rise over run? It would be 1 over 1. Right? 1 over 1 equals 1. 2 over 2 equals 1, right? So m equals 1. Now, the second thing we need to find is the y-intercept. So where does this line cross the y-intercept, right? Let me clear this so that you can see a little clearer, right? Where does this line cross the y-intercept? Well, at 1, right? So now we have the equation for the slope-intercept form. It is y equals x plus 1. Okay, let's move on to problem 2. So this one's a little harder, but I think you guys can do it. Now remember, yet again, I'm reminding you, all we need is 2 things, the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to give you some time to look at it and think, and then we'll go over it together as a class. Okay, so what you should have done is you should have been able to first identify the y-intercept. This is really easy, right? Where does this line cross the y-axis, right? Well, you should be able to know that it's at 0, 2. So you should already find b, right? b equals 2. This should have been the very easy part, right? Next, all we need to do is find the slope. So remember, we want to choose 2 points that are integers, right? So we want to choose the 2 places that are easy is we can use this location here, which is 6, 0, and another is we could use this point here, which is 0, 2. So what is the rise from this point to this point, right? Well, here, what I want you to make sure that we know is we're going from left to right, right? So where does this start? Well, we are starting here at 2, and where do we end up? At 0. So what is the change in rise? Well, we didn't actually rise, we fell, right? We went from 2 to 0. So what's the difference? The difference is -2, right? And second, let's look at the run. The run, well, we're going from 0 and we're going to 6. So the run is going to be 6. And remember, I talked about it earlier, but whenever you have a slope and it's going down as you go to the right, it's always going to be a negative slope. So it's going to be rise over run, or -2 over 6, which when you simplify equals -1/3, right? So now since we have the m and the b, we just say y equals -1/3 x plus 2. Right, and let's look to make sure that this is correct. So we can choose any number here, right? So remember, when we input a number for x, it's going to give us y. So let's choose this number here, -3. So we say y equals -1/3, -3. So we get y equals -1/3, -3 plus 2. Well, what's -3 times -1/3? Well, it's going to be -3 times -1, which gives us 3. 3 over 3 is 1 plus 2, which gives us 3, right? So as you can see, when we inputted these numbers, it gave us the same answer on this linear equation, right? So I want you guys to keep watching this video, because I know in 8th grade when we were in class at our bar, so we went over this a lot, right? This is major information that you need to know. Like, without doing this, you can't proceed to 9th grade, because in 9th grade we're going to go over more linear equations and it's going to get more complex. So this is a fundamental skill. You need to be able to graph, that we learned in the previous video, and you're also going to need to be able to interpret graphs and create linear equations. Okay, if you have any questions, please ask me on Google Classroom and I can help you out. All right, thank you.